Hey everyone! Today, we're peering through the fog on some of the most isolated railway tracks in India. We've all heard campfire ghost stories, right? The eerie wails in the night, the mysterious figures standing alone on an empty platform. But what if I told you that these spine chilling tales aren't just for cheap thrills? What if these local myths are actually preserving some profoundly deep sociological truths, generational trauma, and totally erased histories? In today's Explainer, we're peeling back the layers of India's haunted railways to discover what these ghosts are really trying to tell us. Okay, let's dive right into this, because this sounds literally like the plot of a horror movie, but it's a documented historical fact. Let's look at the Begunkodor Railway Station in West Bengal. I want you to imagine a vital piece of public infrastructure situated right on the main line between West Bengal and Jharkhand, just completely abandoned. And we're not talking for a few days or a few months, but for decades. And the official reason? A ghost. For exactly 42 years, this station was entirely shut down. The story goes that back in 1967, the local station master tragically died shortly after reporting a truly terrifying sighting: a woman, clad in a white sari, walking along the tracks in the dead of night. Now, the panic that followed this was so intense and so deeply rooted in the local community that railway staff flat out refused to work there, and passengers absolutely refused to disembark. The entire station just froze in time. And this fear held on for decades. It wasn't until 2009, a full 42 years later, that then Railway Minister Mamata Banerjee officially reopened Begunkodor. In 2017, a group of rationalists even camped out on the platform overnight, specifically to bust the myth of the ghosts once and for all. But here's the really fascinating part. Despite all of that myth-busting, the fear persists even today. The ticket counter opens at 4:30 a.m., but it completely shuts down by sundown, around 5:30 p.m. It briefly opens at 9 p.m. for one last train, but reportedly absolutely no one buys tickets. The daily wagers who use the station make absolutely sure they're gone before the sun sets. No way are they sticking around.
Well, that perfectly sets up Section 1, India's most haunted tracks.
Because across the network, we see specific tragedies attached to public spaces like this. Take Uttar Pradesh at the Naini railway station. Locals there speak of the spirits of freedom fighters and prisoners who were unjustly executed in the nearby Naini jail during the British era. They say their spirits are still wandering the tracks. Or look at the Dumbi Valley station in Maharashtra, which is one of the busiest commuter hubs out there. Alongside stories of a dangerous rail crossing that's claimed lives, there's a recurring, genuinely heartbreaking account of a woman in her 40s. She's dressed in office attire, standing on the platform late at night, just weeping inconsolably. When asked what's wrong, she simply says she wants to go home, but can't. And the next day, she's completely invisible to everyone else. These aren't just random, generic scares. These are incredibly specific, highly detailed tragedies permanently attached to public spaces.
Let's move to Section 2, Barog Station and the Academic Pivot. This brings us to a concept called post-colonial hauntology. Now, don't let the academic jargon intimidate you. It's actually a brilliant way of framing history. It essentially proposes that ghosts aren't just spooky figures of the past. They're representations of exclusions, absences, and unresolved social violence. Hauntology suggests that abusive systems of power, think colonialism or rapid forced industrialization, leave deep scars. And when those scars are ignored by the official history books, well, they manifest as ghosts in the everyday lives of the people. This is exactly what researcher Rujul Singh explores in the Integral Research Journal. And he builds heavily on the phenomenal ethnographic documentation by Meenakshi Chowdhury in her book, Ghost Stories of the Shimla Hills. What Singh and Chowdhury do here is honestly revolutionary. They treat these Himachali folk narratives and oral ghost stories as serious cultural history. They argue that these tales aren't just backward superstitions holding a society back. No, they're the exact mechanism through which the locals process the trauma and hidden anxieties created by colonialism. Now, what's really interesting is how perfectly the ghost of Barog Station fits this academic lens. Legend says the station is haunted by Colonel Barog, a British engineer who committed suicide after a massive, catastrophic failure while constructing a railway tunnel. In the local imagination, his ghost becomes this powerful parable of imperial failure and colonial guilt. But it's not just the British colonizers who haunt these hills. The landscape is practically vibrating with the suppressed histories of mistreated tribal workers, betrayed soldiers, and exploited laborers who died constructing these massive colonial projects. Their spirits linger because their suffering was never officially acknowledged. The sociologist Avery Gordon puts this so beautifully. She says, and I quote, "Haunting is a constituent element of modern social life, an animated state in which a repressed or unresolved social violence makes itself known."
Basically, when the official archives and government gazettes entirely erase your suffering, your community ensures you are remembered through the medium of a haunting. The ghost demands the attention that history denied them.
Which leads us right into Section 3, the Trudial and Subaltern Feminism.
So, the crucial point here is understanding the enormous gap between the myth and the sociological reality. In popular culture, female spirits, often called the Trudial, are depicted through a deeply misogynistic lens. They're usually shown as seductive, malevolent monsters who haunt roads or banyan trees with inverted feet, existing only to lure men to their deaths. But when researchers actually analyze the origins of these stories, they find a profound subaltern feminist reality. These spirits are almost always women who died unjustly. They're victims of domestic violence, betrayal, or extreme patriarchal silencing. The Trudial is actually a potent symbol of feminine rage. Meenakshi Chaudhary notes this perfectly in one of the tales she documented. The quote goes, "She was wronged in life, but in death she claimed her power, and no man dared tread her path after sunset." I mean, think about how incredibly powerful that is. For a marginalized woman in a rigid, patriarchal society with absolutely no legal or social recourse, becoming a ghost is her only path to agency. The narrative of the haunting offers posthumous justice. It's a way for the voiceless to finally reclaim their power and command respect, or at least fear, from the very society that subjugated them. And this brilliantly illustrates why oral traditions are so absolutely vital. The research reveals that lower caste individuals, indigenous populations, and women simply did not have access to the official, male-dominated colonial printing presses. They literally couldn't write their traumas into the history books. So what did they do? They bypassed the official records entirely. They wove their truth into local folklore. The ghost story becomes a protective vessel for their history. Ultimately, what we are looking at is history disguised as horror. These narratives serve as vernacular historiography, preserving the painful events that the state conveniently forgot. They provide a communal mechanism for processing generational trauma, giving communities a way to cope with the sheer, overwhelming scale of colonial and patriarchal violence. And finally, they act as a tool of cultural endurance. By passing these localized, highly specific ghost stories down from generation to generation, these communities are actively resisting the homogenization of history. They simply refuse to be erased.
Which leaves us with a lingering thought to carry with you long after this explainer ends. When an entire community refuses to step onto a railway platform after 5 p.m., or when a tale of a weeping woman in an office outfit is passed around a commuter train, who are we really afraid of? Are we terrified of the dead returning to haunt us? Or are we actually terrified of the living and the systems of power, violence, and silencing that create these ghosts in the first place? Definitely something to think about the next time you hear a ghost story.